Hey everybody, this is Kelvin Red. I got a question for you. Are you and your spouse and or significant other, are you wired differently? If so, that could be a good thing. That's what I want to talk to you about in this video. So I know some of you might be wondering like, well, Kelvin, why are you talking about, some of this personal stuff? Well, I want you to keep something in mind that I know for a fact that everything we do is connected. Work, home and work. And I know that many of you who follow me, you're leaders. And one of my favorite quotes is by the founder of Chick-fil-A, Truett Cathy. And he says, you can't expect an employee to do well at work when they're having problems at home. And sometimes these problems are because, we're wired differently from our significant other or our spouse. So I want to use some examples tonight of me and my wife. Like for instance, my wife, Tanya, we're wired differently. Now, interestingly enough, we think alike. Yeah, we're both concrete thinkers, we're process oriented, we're social, but behaviorally, we are very different. Tanya is an extrovert. Tanya is energized by being around other people. Tanya speaks 25,000 words a day. I'm on the other end of the spectrum. Me, I'm on the quiet end. I speak about 5,000 words a day. I'm energized by being alone. Now, that doesn't mean I don't like to go to the party and I don't like to go out and have fun. It's just that when I do, I have to really, really guard my energy. Now, here's something I want you to keep in mind. I'm not saying that because we're wired differently and we're both on this journey towards self-awareness that we don't have disagreements, but we do. And a lot of times our disagreements are around our behaviors. And so I want to share some stories with you on how we have dealt with these and what we do to be able to communicate better and understand one another's differences. So let me give you a little background story. A couple of years ago, my daughter of choice, Haley, we don't have steps in our family, but my daughter of choice, Haley, she had an event at the Auburn Convention Hotel at Auburn University, and she's in the field of culinary arts. She's a senior, and she's traveled around the world, and I mean, like literally, she's traveled around the world. She would have been in Italy this past year if we had not had the pandemic. She was all set to go, and she couldn't go, so she was bombed. And so she had a culinary arts event one evening. Now, my wife and I, we both go. And when we get there, we found ourselves seated with one of her very good friends who is also in the same field. We found ourselves seated with one of her their parents. And when I attend an event like this, because I'm a certified emergenetics associate, one of the things I've come to realize that typically when we are around other couples, one of them will be the introvert and one of them will be the extrovert. Not always, but about 95% of the time. So I realized when we get there that I'm probably going to be the quiet one, and then one of the other spouses is going to be one of the quiet ones, and Tanya and whoever the other third expressive, or the person who really enjoys, they're very talkative, enjoys being around people, they will do all the talking. And that typically what's happens. And I allow that to happen because it takes a lot of pressure off of me. I don't have to come up with topics. I'd like to think that I'm a conversationalist, but sometimes I'm not. It depends. So on this particular night, when we had the event, I had a workshop early that day. Now keep in mind, I only speak 5,000 words a day, all right, on average. So by the time we get to the event, I'm out of words. Okay, I'm like, so I allowed Tanya. Tanya just carried the conversation. And after I got a little bit of a rest period going, I kind of chimed in and I started to have a lot of fun myself. That's how we do this little give and take about ourselves. Now, from an assertiveness standpoint, Tanya is much more assertive than I am. Tanya is one of those, she can be very demanding. She can be very direct. Me on the other hand, I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I'm more peacekeeping. I don't like conflict. Doesn't mean I can't engage in it, but I prefer not to. Tanya doesn't mind a good debate. Okay, like a lot of people who have her type of profile. So I'll never forget, 2 years ago, I attended a conference in Atlanta. Like I'm in business for myself, so I have to do my own personal development. So Tanya, she goes with me. It's on a Friday through Sunday. And when we get to the hotel, we're at the Omni Hotel in downtown Atlanta, and the conference was across the street of the World Congress Center. And so my goal was to get there, get checked in, take my clothes and everything upstairs, help Tanya, and then I can run across the street and enjoy this fantastic conference that I had been looking so forward to attending. Well, when we get there, there's a long line, number one, at the front desk. And then by the time we get there, there's a problem and there's a delay. I mean, like really like 20, 30 minutes. And I'm looking at my phone, I'm looking at the time, I'm ready to get out of there. So I turned to Tanya. I said, look, I hate to do this, but can you handle this? I want to really go ahead and, go ahead and get across the street. And Tanya's very flexible, so she says, yeah, go ahead, go ahead. So I go across the street. I'm all excited. And I go and I attend the conference. And this is what's really interesting. So later that evening, when I get back to the hotel and after Tanya and we have dinner, I just thought about it. I said, well, hey, how was the check-in earlier today? Oh, and she said, it was great. Everything went fine. She goes, I got us a couple of free newspapers, some free bottles of water, some snacks, and some passes. I said, did you pay for all that? She goes, no, they gave it to me. That was because she was very direct. She was very demanding. And because they had us waiting, she made sure that we got something out of the deal. So that's how we kind of do this give and take. We help one another out when it comes to things like that. So that's what it takes when you're wired differently. And now that I say that, let me just mention this. It does take two things to understand when you are wired differently. Two things you got to do. Number one, you got to be on that road to self-awareness. You got to be on that journey, because if you're not on that journey, then you're going to be one of those people that thinks that everybody's supposed to think like me. And if you don't think like me, something's wrong with you. That could not be more further from the truth. A lot of you recognize that you and your spouse or significant other, that you're wired differently. But here's the deal. You don't know why. And that's what emergenetics does for me. It helps me use the science to understand why we're wired differently. And when you really understand that, you just, oh, that's just Tanya. And she looks at me and says, oh, that's just Kelvin. But here's another thing you got to have also. You got to have a compromise, because when you have two people who are in a relationship and you're on opposite ends of the spectrum, most of the time you're going to be thinking differently. You're going to approach tasks and problems and projects differently. So you got to meet in the middle. Like I utilize Tanya's strengths and she utilizes mine. So this is what I wanted to talk to you tonight. I know Valentine's Day is on the horizon, and a lot of you are going to be having a lot of have a big plans this weekend. Tanya asked me the other night, she says, what are we going to do for Valentine's Day? And I said, well, maybe we'll just go sleep in the other room. That'll be our hotel. Listen, we are in a pandemic, okay? So this is Kelvin Red. If you would like to know more about how you and your spouse, how you're wired differently and how you think differently and what have you, hey, drop some comments below. You can inbox me. If you want to, you can email me at kelvin@kelvinred.com. This is Kelvin Red, and as I like to say, remember, define your destiny.